Okay, we're back with the economy of Bermuda, and we're here with Mr. Robert Stewart, who is the author of a guide to the economy of Bermuda, which was published in 2003. So today we're having a chat with him about current issues and what's going on with the Bermuda economy. And now we're about to go into, does Bermuda have a third crop, or is there a third crop? Bermuda being a two-crop economy, tourism and international business, is there some way we can generate revenue from some third crop? Let's find out his ideas on that. Mr. Stewart, tell me, two-crop economy, is there a third crop somewhere for us to get involved in?
Well, the answer is I'm sure there is, but I got no idea what it is. But let me answer your question by saying, let's go back 100 years. Let's go back to the year 1900. Right? In 1900, if people have paid attention to the history classes, which very few people do, but if they paid attention, they would know that in Bermuda back in 1900, there was a two-crop economy then. One was actually growing lilies and growing onions and other assorted crops, which were sent up to America in ships before refrigeration. And the other part of the economy was the military. The Royal Navy was based here, as was the British Army. Americans had not yet come because the Second World War had not started. So, if you were a young Bermudian growing up, you either became a farmer or you cleaned the shoes and did the laundry for the British Army or the Royal Navy. These were the only two alternatives. Now, clearly there were professional jobs like lawyers and doctors and so on. Because Bermuda even then was a reasonably sophisticated place, but that was for this sort of job. Now, nobody in 1900 had any idea that tourism would grow to the extent that it was. The airplane it was just rudimentary. There were no commercial flights. There were no airplanes. There were no big ships that could travel from big prosperous cities like New York. International business didn't exist because there was no international business. I mean, there were a few, many British companies and American companies who had gone abroad, like growing bananas in Guatemala or growing tea in India, something like that. But there was no international business in the conventional sense of the word as we understand it. So back in 1900, if you asked that question to me then, I would say, yeah, I don't know. There might be something, but I don't know what it is because I'm not an entrepreneur. Let's build ships to take tourists from New York down to Bermuda, where they get some good weather instead of that freezing cold stuff they get in January and February. There were people like a Swedish company and a British match company who said, hey, we could set our operations up here. And this was in the 1930s, remember. We can set our operations up here. And there were people like American International who said, hey, we don't like living in China because Mao Zedong's going to take over and he's going to shoot us. Let's go to somewhere where there's not going to be a revolution and where people are not going to kill us, right? And so they took Bermuda. But people came up with unusual ideas. And let me give you an example of my own personal experience. I left teaching in 1969. Right? I left teaching for a variety of reasons, but mainly because I wasn't getting paid enough. And I went to work for Shell. People said to me, teachers, and a lot of civil servants said to me, and a lot of people I knew, because I played football and all that stuff, a lot of people I knew said, you must be mad, you're going to work for the Shell Oil Company? Why would you want to be pumping gas when you could be teaching? And I said, well, I'm not really going to be doing that. I said, because Shell does a lot of things, like they run insurance companies and pension funds and oil trading and tanker companies and that sort of stuff. And people said, well, we don't see any stuff like this around Bermuda. And I said, well, it's all in like people's minds and ledgers and stuff like that. And they said, oh wow, this sounds a boring job. Why would anybody go and work for an international company when you've got a safe, secure job like teaching? And everybody thought I was mad, right? And this is 1969, when international companies were fairly prevalent. People did not understand and did not appreciate what a significant role they played in the economy. And I didn't either, believe it or not, until I got there and I suddenly realized, gee, these companies are doing all this stuff from Bermuda. And then within a couple of years I was traveling to Japan, I was in Venezuela, I was in London and Paris and all this stuff. And I said, this is great. And people saying, and my son said to me, I'm not going to get a job like yours. He said, all you do is sit in a big desk and look out a window and read a newspaper. He said, why don't you drive one of the big trucks? My son was probably about 5 years old at the time. This was the mentality of a lot of people. This is not really a job because you're not doing anything. Now people, you know, are beating the doors down to try and get into international companies.
Now, on this, just going back really to this third crop, gambling has been, you know, it's put on the table. It's been a bit quiet recently, but it's been put on the table. Is this potential third crop, you think, or a gamble?
Well, the answer I don't know, because I mean, I never go to casinos. The main reason I never go to casinos is not because I don't like gambling, because I play poker a lot. So I mean, I'm used to playing cards and making bets and stuff. I don't go to casinos because they don't build big casinos and have good-looking girls serving drinks and stuff like that from the winnings of the gamblers. You know when you go in there, you're a sucker, you're going to lose money, right? Now, gambling in the United States is a dying industry. The casinos are closing in New Jersey. They're literally closing all over the place, including Las Vegas. The skeptic in me says, what great talent do we have in Bermuda that will make gambling successful when the guys who've been in it most of their lives in New Jersey or in Las Vegas can't make it successful? What talent do we have? And it might be successful. You know, there might be some guy somewhere saying, I've got a brilliant idea, you know, where we can make a lot of money, but the guys who come in and gamble can make a lot of money as well. And money grows in trees, you know. And don't believe Bob Richards, money does grow in trees, you know, it falls from heaven. Some guy up there will drop, you know, $1,000 notes and we'll all be rich and happily ever after. People believe that. It ain't going to happen. I don't think gambling is going to be successful, added to which it will change fundamentally the social structure of Bermuda, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. I don't think it is, but you know, who am I to opine on that?
Now, let's continue on with education, and we were talking about it producing enough people to take some of these high-paying jobs or these jobs that require, you know, more schooling and more education. And like you said, we have to go back to the education system. You mind just continuing on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I was really speaking about the fact 40% of the Bermuda population send their children to private school. And these are not, you know, reasonably wealthy people. These are people who are ordinary people, you know. My housekeeper, for example, sends both her children to private school. Or say one of her children to private school, the other one will be going to private school when she's old enough. And I know lots of people, you know, who just do ordinary basic jobs. Important jobs, but they do ordinary basic jobs and they don't get paid, you know, a couple of $100,000 a year. They're paying $40,000 a year or thereabouts to send a child to private school. Now, my idea really would be, why not give everybody the chance to send their children to private school? Now, there's a very famous economist called Milton Friedman, of whom I'm a great admirer, who died maybe 10 years ago. But he basically devoted a large chunk of his life in the latter stages to espousing an idea of what is called vouchers. And vouchers basically say to parents of young children, we know how much it costs to educate a child. Let's say it's $40,000 a year, which is probably a bit high, but we know it costs $40,000. Here's a voucher for $40,000. You spend it and send your child to a school that you want to send your child to. That school can be in Bermuda, it can be in abroad, it can be anywhere. Here is a voucher worth $40,000. It must be spent on education. It can't be spent on buying a new car or going on a vacation to Las Vegas. You've got to spend it on education. Now, it'd be very difficult to monitor a situation like that, but it can be done. If that was done, ordinary people would not be sending their kids to some of the cattle pens we call schools in Bermuda. They'd be sending them either to the United States or to Canada or somewhere like that, or they'd be sending them to the best schools in Bermuda. What happens is poor people, and regrettably, poor people tend to be more predominantly black than white, are not able to get the proper education for their children to allow those children to go on and do bigger and better things. Now, I'm not saying that becoming a great education will guarantee you great success in life. You know, it may not. But at least it gives you a shot at being successful. I can tell, and I'm sure you can tell. I mean, I used to be a policeman many years ago, but I mean, I can travel around the Parsons Road area, or places in Somerset and so on, and I can tell kids who are probably 5 or 6 year old, who are probably as bright as anybody you care to find in Bermuda, you really don't have that much of a chance, kiddo, in this world because of your circumstances. And that basically is where we should be generating our resources. How do we get people out of the pathway to poverty? If you live in this area, you've got to send your kid to some school. I'm not sure which one it is. Sometimes I've had young children. But you've got to send it to somewhere some government bureaucrat tells you to. You can't say, I want to send it to Salters, I want to send it abroad. You can't do that. Wrong. Totally wrong.
All right. Now we're getting to the end of this conversation, and I want to basically close out looking at what we have here. We have the economic situation. We have a social situation going on, and to me, it seems the dilemma is always, how do you balance these things out? You know, it seems that right now, currently, sacrifices are going to have to be made, whether some people like it or not. It's going to happen, or we can say some people are going to be sacrificed. I don't know how exactly we put it, but what is your thoughts on how do you balance? We need to do this, we need to do X, but at the same time we have people who are hurting over here or feeling the pain over this side, and the pain gets worse when they feel or think or see that other people are doing well, as you put it. How do we balance that out? Because in the end, it's going to affect us all. Because if the social fabric gets out of control, that's going to affect everything else. So how do you walk through, you know, those waters?
Well, it's both difficult and it's easy, in my opinion. I mean, people will call me a nutcase, or they'll call me something or other. People have been around in this world for roughly 100,000 years. It's only in the last 250 years that people like us have experienced adequate diet, we've experienced travel, we've experienced being able to drive a car, we've experienced being able to watch football games or tennis games in another part of the world. And you say to yourself, why has that happened? The reason basically it happened, starting 250 years ago, and by a strange quirk of nature, you can actually almost pinpoint that year. And that year is 1776. In the year 1776, two major events took place. One, as everybody knows, was the Declaration of Independence, where Thomas Jefferson, who was my most admired man in history, wrote the Declaration of Independence, and basically he said, all people are created equal, and government is a servant of the people, and that people have an inherent right to be free and to make choices and to work as they think best in their own interest. And that was more than just a declaration, a revolutionary declaration against George III. This was a declaration against everything that had happened in history until then. There have been a few movements in that direction, the Enlightenment in UK and the Renaissance in Italy, but he, in essence, in a very short document, made it very clear that people are endowed with certain rights, not from the government, but from some guy up there. And I'm not a great believer in some guy up there, but people have the right to be free to do what they want. Exactly on the same date, in 1776, a really, eccentric Scotsman who was born maybe 20 miles from where I was born, and people think I'm eccentric because I espouse his views as well, came up with the idea in a book called The Wealth of Nations. He said, if you leave ordinary people alone to do their day-to-day work, they will graduate into that occupation which makes them the most money. And only they are the people who can do that. So if you said to me, what can we do to make Bermuda better for the future? I would say you do what the Americans did in 1776, and you do what Adam Smith suggested in 1776, is leave people alone. Let them work out their own salvation, and they will do it. They will become wealthier, and they will become much better people, because they are allowed to say to themselves, I want to do this, I want to do that. And we've got a few eccentric guys, even today, like Bill Gates, who revolutionized the world. Nobody in their right mind would have said Bill Gates was going to be a successful guy when they looked at him as a teenager. He was a bloody dropout of college, and he smoked dope and all the rest of it. By rights, he should have been in prison, and he should be, a guy who doesn't count anymore. He should have committed suicide by the time he was 30. He's now one of the richest people in the world because he was sufficiently eccentric, because he was sufficiently free to come up with new ideas. So the idea is leave people alone and give them freedom. What do I see as the future for Bermuda? The answer I don't know, but there is some guy somewhere in Bermuda, as there is in the United States, as there is in every country you care to name. There's some guy somewhere who everybody thinks is odd, who is going to come up with an idea which will change the world. As I use an example, go back to 1900. If somebody said to you, somebody like me said to you, hey, this is 1900, what do you think is going to be the greatest revolutionary change in Bermuda? Let me give you 3 examples. I said, number 1, you will be able to move a letter from St. George's to Hamilton in 2 days. Right, when in those days it probably took 7 days. I said, you'll be able to watch a football match in Bermuda, which is being played in Australia. And number 3, you will be able to watch the House of Parliament in day-to-day operation through television cameras. And you say, you must be nuts. Nobody can see a football game in Australia when you're living in Bermuda. Nobody can even travel to the United States, far less go to Australia. Yeah. All these things are impossible. As for getting a letter, yeah, we can get horses and we can get letters from St. George's to Hamilton. What's happened? We watch sports events all over the world. We watch political events all over the world. But we cannot get a bloody letter from St. George's to Hamilton in 2 days. It cannot be done. Right? It can be done. We've got a post office which has seen its mail reduced by at least 80%. I get very little mail these days, except, junk mail. All my bills come electronically. All my bank statements come electronically. Anything that's important is done electronically. It doesn't go through the mail. But we've still got the same number of post office, same number of postmen. Doing what? I think they're twiddling their thumbs waiting for get the pension from the government pension scheme. But the fact is, if you leave people alone, if you let them keep their heads and work out their own advantages, it will happen. But because it can't be predicted, everybody said, oh, this guy is crazy. Everybody thought Adam Smith and Thomas Jefferson were crazy. They weren't.
Well, Justin, I want to thank you for giving us this time today. And there's one thing I cannot leave without saying, and that is, do you think that we can realistically get ourselves out of this debt situation, and how long do you think it would take us?
Well, the answer is yes, we can get ourselves out of it, yeah. Anybody can get themselves out of anything. I mean, guys can get themselves out of casemates, so we can get ourselves out of that problem. What will be done to do it? The answer is I don't know. But I'm an old man, there is some, believe me, there is some guy somewhere who is aged about 17 to 25, who's got some ambition, some scheme, some plot to make the world a better place. And he will do it. And we have a memorandum, but I don't know who they are. Nobody knows who they are. But they will do it. History is full of guys who have changed the world. And when they were young and when they first came up with the ideas, everybody thought they were wrong. And they've done it.
Well, Mr. Stewart, it's definitely been a pleasure. Okay. And thanks a lot for giving us this time this morning.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
These ideas have been around for, these are not new ideas. This stuff's been around since the 18th century, but we've forgotten it.
Yeah. Well, you've been watching The Economy of Bermuda here on Channel 82.